Well, hey, friends, welcome to AWKNG's Ask a Scholar podcast. This is where you, the everyday Christian, can get your questions about the Bible answered by a biblical scholar. I'm Carla.
And I'm Mike, and we're both glad that you decided to join our discussion. So let's dive in.
Well, welcome everyone to episode 38. This is the second of two episodes that we have been recording, getting your questions on the book of Matthew answered. And we've got Dr. David Capes back with us. Dr. Capes, welcome. Thanks for joining us for a second time.
Glad to do it. I'm honored, really honored.
Awesome. Well, we learned so much from you on the first episode. So, listeners, if you did not get a chance to listen to that first episode, please go back, take a listen to that. And then we are going to dive straight into questions for this episode. So, this first question says in Matthew 17, we are given a testimony of Jesus's transfiguration, where he invited Peter, James, and John to join him. During the transformation, two men also appeared speaking with Jesus, Moses and Elijah. As we know, both Moses and Elijah met with Yahweh on top of a mountain. Is it possible that all five of these men stepped outside of their earthly timelines and into a heavenly realm or divine council and met with Yahweh/Jesus?
Boy, that's a complicated question. That's a good
Right?
question. So what's going on in the Transfiguration? One of the things I love to try to point out is that key events in Matthew's gospel take place upon the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Mountains are special places.
Yeah.
So you have the Sermon on the Mount, you have the Mount of Temptation, you have the Mount of Transfiguration, and at the very end, when Jesus, it was called the Great Commission, Jesus takes him to a mountain in Galilee. So these key things happen on a mountain, and because mountains are special places. It's where shrines are built, it's where temples are built, it's where there's this sort of expected exchange between heaven and earth. So I think that is a dynamic that is at work in Matthew's gospel here in the story of the Transfiguration, as well as in other places too, whenever there's a mountain in view. And in some cases, it's not just a mountain. I think in one, he says it's a very high mountain, right? So he makes that. And all of us have been on top of a mountain and had that sort of sense of awe, I think, and reverence that we can't experience. So when it comes to this particular passage, Peter, James, and John, they're an inner circle of Jesus's disciples. They have special access to Jesus at particular times, and they are privileged to see something unique happen. And that is, I do think that what we have is a heavenly moment, that it's as if heaven dips down into earth, and for a moment of time with the cloud. The cloud is very often associated with theophanies, with special revelations. The cloud dips down, it engulfs them, as it were, and they see Jesus with Moses and Elijah. Now, those two are representative of the law and the prophets, Moses, Elijah. It could have been some other prophets, I suppose, but there's something unique about Elijah, because Elijah, he's caught up into a chariot, and doesn't face death in the normal way. So what's going on here? I think heaven is come down, and Jesus is transformed into a kind of glory for his disciples to see and to witness on this particular occasion. And being human beings, they're going to fumble around and they're going to try to figure out what to do to kind of make this thing permanent. And do we build a shrine here? Do we build a shrine there? Exactly what do we do? Because when people had theophanies in the past, that's what they did. They're following a script that other people had done in the past. And I do think that what you described here is this heavenly realm of this council, that they are meeting with the King of the universe. And they're meeting with the King of the universe in the form of the embodiment of that, of him, and that is with Jesus. So I identify Jesus very closely with Yahweh here, and I regard Jesus as the again, to use a Richard Hayesism, the embodiment of the God of Israel. So when they understand at some moment, at some level, that what they are partaking in is something of heaven's glory that has come down to enshroud Jesus and to include, as it were, the law and the prophets together. So Jesus is not discontinuous with the law and the
Yeah,
prophets. Jesus is continuing what the law and the prophets started from the very beginning.
it's
Mm.
great.
Yeah.
Very well said.
I do wonder. I mean, I found the question also really kind of interesting. I mean, I think David, you would agree. It probably wasn't that they stepped out of their earthly timeline. I, I I do think though it does seem to be that it is an interesting thing to me because I don't know why Matthew and Mark's recount of this story does not mention about what they talked about,
Yeah.
but Luke's mentions something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was in Luke 9:31, and the NIV translation. I'm just going to insert a word instead of what it's used here. They spoke about his exodus,
Yes.
which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Right. So
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
mosaic like callbacks right there, just with his use of the word for Exodus there.
Right. Right.
But it's so interesting. It's like Moses and Elijah. They're technically in glory. They're technically they're now in another type of existence with Yahweh with God the Father, and yet they are still very much concerned about what you're about to do, Jesus. What you're getting ready for your exodus. You're about to do something in Jerusalem that is affecting everyone, including us, in some sense.
Mm.
And so like I'm glad Luke provided that bit of detail because it just drove me crazy of like what are they talking about? And
Right.
yet
Right.
this is what this transfiguration moment was. It was that Moses and Elijah are actually encouraging Jesus of what he's about to face.
Yeah.
And like what a crazy moment. Like he's literally having the mountaintop experience, the best mountaintop experience. But he's about to descend down into a very dark season of life because
Yeah.
of what's waiting for him in Jerusalem. And so it seems so moving to me that Moses and Elijah, even though they're in a different state of being, and yet they are still just as much concerned
Yeah.
about what is about to take place. And I think
You know,
that, I don't
I
know.
think there's a connection there, Mike, between the idea of what's happening in heaven and on earth, right? It's
Yeah.
not, it's, what's happening in heaven and on earth are, it's like, I've heard it's described as the first floor and the ground floor, right?
Mm,
Of
Hmm.
creation. I mean, it's the things that happen here affect there, the things that happen there affect here. So it's not as if the veil is so solid that nothing gets through. I think mountaintops are just an indication that these are the kinds of places where that veil between the heavenly and the earthly is about as thin as it gets,
mm,
right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not. I am a little uncomfortable with that idea of stepping out of an earthly timeline.
yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly what that language means, but I do think that heaven has come down
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and dropped below the ceiling, as it
Yeah.
were, and that they are privy to something that no one at the bottom of that mountain there that day could have seen, would have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and the other thing
Yes.
is, it's kind of interesting, going back to what you were saying, Mike, is that, when Paul had these experiences, he talked about it in 2 Corinthians 12. I
Yeah.
said, I know a man in heaven 14 years ago, and he went up into heaven, at third heaven, and he heard things and saw things which cannot be uttered. I
Yeah.
wonder to what degree are there things that the disciples might have overheard but could not have uttered, even if
Hmm.
they wanted to tell people, let me tell you what I just heard, right?
Yeah.
They may not have been able to. It's
That's a
like
good point.
Paul is prohibited from saying anything. So I wonder, and then Luke comes along and gives us at least an inkling of
Yeah.
what they're talking about. They're talking about his exodus, his Jesus's exodus from this realm into into the new realm, the realm to come, as it were, the world to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool
that's
question,
great.
though. Cool
Yeah, it
question.
is a good question, and I like you guys' responses. I think that's going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 2 says, to early Christians, both Jew or Gentile, reading the Gospels, what would you think, what would they think, sorry, salvation meant? Or better put, in their context, what was salvation? And how does their context help me understand and share with others what it means to be saved?
Mm.
So I think they're asking, does salvation, what we think of salvation, did it mean the same thing to the first readers of the Gospels?
Yeah, I think when you go back to the Old Testament and just start reading those texts where it talks about the redemption, salvation, rescue, those kinds of things, uh, it seems to mean very more often than not that they are rescued in this world for this life.
Mm.
So when Jonah goes down in the belly of the fish and he is in a sense rescued. Some would say he's resurrected, that he has died and he is as resuscitated, maybe better word, from that event. Um, he is that is not really about the world to come, his life in the hereafter. It's about something else altogether. So I think the idea of salvation, in a sense, for us as Christians today, we often think about it primarily in terms of afterlife. Where am I going to go in the afterlife? I
Yeah.
don't think that that's probably the case for people living in the first century, the Jews and
Mm,
the Christians, the people who first received these books. As I indicated, I think both in the book Matthew Through Old Testament Eyes and also in our last podcast together, that when Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount, um, it's not so much about going to heaven. It's about how are we to live in this world with peace and shalom and
mhm.
righteousness and justice. How can we do that? How can we do what is right today and do it with the right motive? It is true. And what's a little bit unique is that when we come to just the name Jesus, Yeshua, the name Jesus means God saves, Yahweh saves. And it goes on and is translated because he will save his people from their sins, as if sins are an ever present, ongoing threat, not just for the afterlife, but for this life as well. So I think we need to rethink a little bit of our thoughts about salvation. We need to get a bit more biblically grounded rather than just automatically thinking it's about afterlife and where am I going to spend the afterlife. Um,
Yeah.
I do think that that's a concern, and I do think that's ultimate salvation involves new creation, and a new creation that is only possible through the parousia.
Hmm.
And so therefore we could point to that that world that God is making, that he is preparing. I go to prepare a place for you, Jesus said. Um, there is a world that is being prepared, and we will occupy that world, that new creation in its fullness, new heavens and a new earth. But God, I do think, has concern, and Jesus did as well, for how we live here, and for us living well here, and when we do sin, seeking forgiveness, and when we do what is right in God's eyes, seeking to do it for the right reason, for the right motive, for the right heart, and seeking out that greater righteousness. So I do think that there's a disconnect to some degree, Carla, that we
Yeah.
have to deal with. That there is more about this world is so brilliant, so special. This creation's so good potentially, and yet we've messed it up, right? Muddied the waters everywhere we go. But what if salvation does begin now? What if there is realized eschatology now?
Hmm.
What if I am saved now, not just in the world to come? What if God is doing this work of redemption now, this work of transformation now? I think it's about now and the world to come.
I think I liked how you said this creation potentially, because I think that's something that we as Christians often, especially maybe modern evangelicals, we've kind of lost sight of, is that
Mm.
salvation is almost treated as though it's a consolation, or as I remember when I was a younger Christian, I would sometimes hear people describe salvation as though it's like fire insurance, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like that it's something like you'll need, but hopefully not too soon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yet it seems to be the way that Jesus always kept talking about the kingdom of God is coming. Actually, in fact, it's here. That
Right.
in the here and now, that I tell you, there's a time that yes, you won't care about which mountain that you will worship on. You'll worship in spirit and in truth. That there was always this sense of salvation has come. You're going to see an effect in the here and now, and you'll see more of it as it culminates, as it builds towards the eschaton. But you're going to feel some difference now.
Yeah.
Something about you, and even your life perspective, what you look for, what you long for, how you understand life, it's going to change even now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been the challenge, especially with us as evangelicals, as we're looking even to now, people are more interested in looking at what the ancient church writers have said.
Yeah.
And yet, and there is this interesting thing of seeing, wow, they actually talked about issues of injustice. They talked about issues about slavery. They talked about issues about, what is right and what is wrong, how to live in this world. When our old characterization of them, our caricatures of them was, oh, they only cared about the afterlife. They only cared about the spiritual things.
Mhm.
But there was actually a real practical down to earth reality of, if you are a slave but you're a Christian, honor your master. Oh, masters, by the way, remember your slaves are Christians like you? They're your brothers and sisters. How do you think you should treat them? And
Mm-hmm.
there was practical implications. I think that's something that we've forgotten about. Salvation is deliverance. Deliverance, yes, from our sins, but also deliverance from the bondage of fear, the bondage to Caesar, the bondage to whatever we called our king that is not Jesus. And
Mm.
so,
Well said. Yeah.
you
No,
know,
that's right. I think, yeah, I think you're exactly right. Our the earliest Christians, I think, are a little closer to the original sources in the original world. We need to listen to them better than we do. We need to know what they said. We need and when you look at how much Paul talks about ethics in his letters, about how, you who have received Christ walk worthy in this life of the one
Mm-hmm.
who has called you, right? So it's not a matter of saying, well, you've got your fire insurance, just go out and play and everything's going to be fine. No, no, but there's a gift, but there is also a demand that comes with that gift, right?
It's
So,
good.
well,
Really good, guys. Very helpful. All right, let's jump to a quick commercial break and then we're going to come back and hit a few more and then we will wrap it up. So let's jump to a quick commercial. If you're not already reading with us, we'd love to have you start reading today. Every month in the Awakening Bible community, we read a book or several books of the Bible together. Readings are only 1 to 3 chapters a day, 5 days a week, with weekends reserved for catch up or deeper study. And as you read, we know that you will likely encounter questions, but that's where we come in. Submit your questions at AWKNG.com and we will do our best to get them answered for you right here on the Ask a Scholar podcast. All right, welcome back, everyone. Okay, now I'm going to prep you guys. This is a little bit of a lengthy question.
okay,
So
all right.
just bear with it. And this person it's really a question coming from the books of Luke and John, but they're searching for answers in the other gospels, Matthew and Mark. So let me
Okay.
just read through the whole thing. And then if you have clarifying questions, let me know. They said in Luke 23:43, Jesus answered the thief on the cross next to him, saying, "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." And in John 20, verse 17, Jesus says to Mary, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." However, in the book of Matthew, neither of these accounts are shared. Can you help further explain how these connect as I don't understand them clearly? Jesus talks about seeing the thief in paradise on the day that they die in one of the Gospels. Yet in the other, he had not ascended to the Father yet 3 days after he died. I've searched in the books of Matthew and Mark to see if there's additional information to fill in these gaps, but I keep coming up lacking.
Hmm. I'll let Mike take this one. No, no, this is a great question. No, it's a great
Yeah.
question, and it's not an easy question because you're talking about actually a couple of different things here. When Jesus talks about the ascension,
Hmm.
he's not talking about his going being in God's presence. He's talking about a specific moment that takes place 40, 40 days longer or so after his crucifixion, where Jesus is
Mm.
enthroned and is seated at the right hand of God. So there's a particular, in fact,
Hmm.
there's a book that I've just gotten that's quite good. Let me show this book to you. It's by Ross Hastings. It's called The Glory of the Ascension,
Okay.
Celebrating a Doctrine for the Life of the Church. This is not something Protestant churches talk about too much, but we should.
Mm.
And the
Yeah.
reason we should is because it's clearly a part of the character of the Gospels and the book of Acts in particular. But the idea of the ascension is distinct from Jesus's, as we might say, his immediate presence in paradise after his death. There's a lot of things we don't know about that particular period of time. When
Hmm.
he says to the thief on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise." I do think that there's an immediacy to that Jesus meant exactly what he said at that point. And that word paradisio is a
Mhm.
word that can mean and refer to heavenly rewards in the afterlife. But the ascension is something a little different. And so the ascension is something that's going to take place uh, roughly from the time of Easter down about 50 days, roughly 40, 50
Okay.
days later. And the church celebrates that. A lot of churches will celebrate on Ascension Sunday because this is the time when Jesus is seated formally at the right hand of God the Father. It's like his coronation day, right?
Yes.
So that's a little bit different thought process than what we see in some of the other gospels where there's not much there's not giving a whole lot of thought to that yet. They're giving a thought maybe to resurrection appearances, which are really key and which were really the key to convincing people that Jesus had conquered death. But these I think Mike, these two things are really running along different tracks altogether. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it was can you mention the book that you showed just
Yeah,
now? Because
Ross Hastings, theologian, teaches at Regent's College up in Vancouver.
the glory of
Yeah.
I've been learning and thinking a little bit more about the ascension the last 2 years because of an interview with David Moffat. He wrote a book
Ah,
called Rethinking the Atonement: New Perspectives on Jesus' Death, Resurrection, and I want to say and ascension. And so he also was making a bigger emphasis of how we don't understand the importance of the ascension of Jesus
mhm.
as Protestants. We typically don't really focus upon that much
Yeah.
in our kind of theology. And it was challenging to hear because in some sense the way that I've been thinking about the cross has changed ever since I became a Christian, because I never even realized that the cross was in some sense his coronation, that
Mm,
it was the cross being seen as though it was a throne, a throne that he would sit upon, that it was the throne where he was crowned upon.
mm,
And yet the resurrection and the ascension is where he is finally recognized and elevated to the position of being above all things as the heavenly king. And like I think that is just something that's very different, especially when he's saying this to Mary, and
yeah.
sort of giving this kind of clear look. Things are about to really change. You knew me as the carpenter walking around Galilee. I am going to really truly be the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. That, like, it's not just title, it will finally be in full on reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very different thing than him assuring to the thief on the cross, "You'll be with me in paradise."
Right.
Um,
Right. I think
it's
I think
also,
yeah.
I was just thinking as well that there was a recent conversation I had with my other, podcast hosts from the other podcast I help out with, and we were talking about like time. How would we experience time in the eschaton? And it seems like there will be some sense of time, but I kind of wondered if, in some sense, what happened to the thief is he didn't go to sleep, but time
Is
wasn't
different.
affecting him as much. That there was something about, as we wait in this kind of intermediate state between the here and our resurrections, does time operate in a very different manner since we're not embodied in that technical sense, right? And so I do wonder if, even just when we understand he's in paradise, yes, that is absolutely true. Does that mean that he is experiencing time, like 2,000 years of time have passed by for him and he feels it? I don't think so. I don't think time will be experienced the same way like how we bodily experience it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Well,
with
and I
you.
think that's really what the person is asking. If I'm rereading this question as you guys are
Mm,
talking, and they got the ascension incorrect in their question. They said 3 days after he died, which you clarified is more like 40 days after when he actually ascended. But I
Yeah.
think that's what they're grappling with is he tells one person, I'm going to be with you
mm, mm.
today, and he tells another person that, don't cling to me. I'm about to ascend, but that's 40 days. And so I think that's the question that they're maybe grappling with.
Mm.
Well, and also there's that weird thing, right? Like, the question didn't bring it up, but there's also that part where Peter in his letters mentioned about how Jesus descended into, into Hades
Yeah,
Yeah.
during the intermediate time of being dead. That he was
right.
there and he was testifying to all these spirits in bondage, and
Yeah.
so it was like,
And maybe
well, I don't
it's
think the
just
thief was there with him.
right, but maybe he's just omnipresent and he's in all the places at one time. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of these things are shrouded mysteries, things that we can't know for certain. I do think that distinguishing between things like resurrection, ascension, the coming of the Holy Spirit, those kinds of things become fairly important. But
Yeah.
I do think the reality for the thief that day, and it will be for us as well, when we breathe our last, to be absent from the body
Mm,
is to be present with the Lord. So we will be
Hmm.
present with, and there's that key word, that preposition that I've grown to love, with. We will be present with Him, and exactly how time will be measured, will it function the same way? I'm with you. I don't think so. I'm not sure we even know what time is anymore. I mean, as I
Yeah.
read more about physics and what happens and how we measure time and those kinds of things. It's it, it's difficult to grapple with. Let me say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's good.
it's just, yeah, you're right about the time itself. Just months ago, a bunch of 20-something-year-olds at our church, it was a beautiful sight for me to see, because we've been seeing a lot of 20-something-year-olds, especially single young adults, coming to the church, and they're coming from a background of nuns, of agnosticism, atheism, new ageism, and they're just, so many of their testimonies lately have been just, I just was walking by the church and I just thought I should just go in there, like, no church background, and they're showing up to our church. And so they were all talking about, like, isn't it amazing God is timeless? Like, he doesn't experience time.
Yeah.
And I just remarked back to them, actually, the thing that moves me a lot at times is that God the Son became human, and thus, in some sense, the Trinity is now locked to our sense of time.
Mm.
That Jesus becoming a human being meant that the God of the universe, the creator,
Hmm.
humbled himself to actually experience time the way that we do.
Mhm.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Like, that he's the eternal one, the one who was, is, and is to come, and yet in his humility of becoming a human being, he came to know what it's like to experience the passage of time like we do.
Mhm.
And that blows my mind, because, like, he
Yeah.
didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
He didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to do that. That's such a humbling thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
it's like
Very
it
good.
goes both ways. It's amazing, but it's just like you really didn't need to do that, Lord. But he did.
But he did.
Well, that's
Yeah.
part of the
Mm.
incarnation, right? To become fully
Yeah.
human means to become fully
Right.
a servant of gravity, a
Yeah.
servant of the passage of time. I mean, just like the rest of us as we live
Yeah.
our mortal existences.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave us with one final question. I think this one will be a pretty quick one. I hope. We'll
Okay.
see. I don't know. But this person asks, why is the Gospel of Matthew the only one to have the words of the Great Commission? It seems important, but it is strange that Jesus's final words are not in the other gospel accounts. So tell us why you think that is.
All right. I think I'll let Mike take care of this. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, no, I think it's a great question. It's interesting how
Yeah.
it's phrased. He said, "What about the Great Commission?" Right? Why is Matthew the only one with the It's interesting how Matthew never calls it the Great Commission.
Mm,
That's
Mm.
our word, right? That's our phrase. We call this the Great Commission. And I wonder about the other commissions. What about in Luke's commission?
Mm.
And it's really found at the hinge of the book Luke and Acts, where Jesus said to his disciples, "Tarry here in Jerusalem, and you'll receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you'll be our
mm,
witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, the ends of the earth." Right? That is Luke's version of the commissioning of the disciples. Now, I don't think Jesus just probably, quote, commissioned his disciples on one occasion. I really see it as a series of things that Jesus said to his disciples in the final days. I think he starts preparing them about a week before he dies, and he's
yeah.
laying the groundwork for what their mission is going to be after he's gone. So the fact that we call it the Great Commission is unique to Matthew doesn't mean that it is unique in Jesus's the fact that Jesus said it in other ways and in other gospels. And in John's gospel, Jesus appears to him after the resurrection. He says, "Peace be with you." And he
Hmm.
breathed upon them and he says, "As the Father has sent me, I am now sending you." Mike
Mm,
Vorman, in his book, Come and Abide,
mm,
is written about that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Abide and Go. Sorry, I knew got that. His book is called Abide and Go. It's a wonderful book, and he talks about that twofold work that we're supposed to come and abide in Jesus, but then we are on the other side to go. And this is his Great Commission scene. Although nobody ever calls it the Great Commission because it's not the last thing.
Mm.
yeah.
But each of the Gospels has a reason for doing the commission the way he does.
Yeah.
And if we had time, we could look at all of them, but in particular, Matthew. Matthew begins his gospel by renaming Jesus Emmanuel, who is God with us, right? So all of Matthew should be written against this idea that Jesus is the one who is God with us. And
Mm,
how does the gospel end? It starts with Emmanuel, God with us. It ends Jesus saying, "Go, make disciples of the nations, baptize them, teach them, and remember, I am with you always." So there's
wow.
this there's these this bookend that comes together. The whole gospel is a gospel about Jesus being with us, and I think that's why Matthew ends it the way he does. He wants the last words of Jesus to be in his account, knowing that Jesus is still going to be around saying other words to other people for a time. Uh, as he does that, he wants the last words to be, "I am with you," just to recapitulate that earlier promise that Jesus is the God with us one.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love that. I've never heard that, but I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It makes so much sense. My gosh.
yeah,
I think yeah, like you, David. I think a lot of folks just have never realized that there is, in many ways, there's a preparation or an exhortation from Jesus to the disciples to go out
yeah,
in every one of the gospel accounts. And
Mhm.
yes,
the the first time I ever realized this was through the missions course I took at Gordon, and it was from the textbook was Timothy Tennett's missiology book, Invitation to World Missions, and he talks about how every one of the Gospels, they all close with a version of a Great Commission. You have Matthew's, which is always the one that everyone thinks of, but Mark has it, so does Luke, and so does John. It's not the exact same words, but it's always this kind of same setting of Jesus exhorting the disciples. You need to go out there and tell people about what you've heard, what you've seen, what you've witnessed about me. And like that's the consistent theming, is that this is why the disciples of Jesus, anyone who's listening to any of these accounts, the question is being answered. Why do you guys care so much? Why do you go and tell us about this news of your king? It's like, well, because he told us to. He commanded us to. We want to. Like, this is a reason why we are doing this.
Yeah, right.
Like, we look strange. Yes, we know this is odd that we're going out and telling you about a king that rose from the dead. But it's true. And like, it must have been one of those weird things of like, why do these Christians do this?
Yeah.
And yet every one of the gospel accounts provides a reasoning for what we're seeing.
Yeah, Jesus commissions in every situation, and he's. I would say, as I think about what I said earlier, I think probably Jesus from the very beginning is preparing his disciples for the mission, right? When in the Sermon on the Mount early on, he mentions, "Blessed are you when you will be persecuted and reviled," knowing that that's going to come to them. He's trying to help them through those agonizing moments. But from the very beginning, Jesus is, in a way, preparing them for the mission that they're going to be on.
Yeah.
Good word. Good word.
Yes.
Those are great questions.
Very good. It's a great question. I'm glad we got to end with that one. That was awesome. Well, thank you so much.
That's the Great Commission answer.
There you go. That's it. I love it. Well, thank you for your time, for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing some wisdom with our students. I know they're all going to be really excited to take your course that's coming out in January. And
I'd love to get
hopefully
their
those that
feedback.
have not taken, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And hopefully those that have not taken the Divine Christ, they'll get to take that as well, because we've gotten tons of great feedback on that over the years since you filmed that. So let us leave you with a final fun question, which is, if you had to choose one book of the Bible to teach from for an entire year straight, what would it be?
So that's right now?
It could be right now. If you had to choose one book, you can't teach
Well,
from any other one.
I am, for the next 3 years, I'm working really closely with Matthew. So I would be Matthew. And it's a long gospel. I mean, it's a big, long gospel. It takes forever. The next one, if you ask me that same question in about 3 or 4 years, I will probably say Philippians.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably say
Well, then
Philippians.
we might have to have you back for Philippians questions when you get to that.
It'll be a lot easier to write a book on 4 chapters of Philippians than 28 chapters of Matthew. In some ways.
Matthew's a big book.
Yeah, it is.
That's awesome. Well, listeners, make sure you check the show notes so you can get all of the links to Dr. Capes' resources. He unpacked those in the first episode if you want to go back and listen to them. But then there's also links below for his website, for the different podcasts that he does, and then also for his books that he's written. So make sure you check that out and take those courses. And I know, Dr. Capes, we will be seeing more of you in the future. I'm excited to continue to work with you on different projects.
God willing, we hope that's the case. I'm honored to be connected with you guys and connected. I was with some pastors recently, and we were up in Minnesota. I'm sorry, Wisconsin. And they were just talking about, do you know Michael Heiser? Do you know his work? They were so excited. And I said, I just happen to know a little bit about that. Yeah. And so he's just, everywhere I go, it's amazing. There are people, and you guys have experienced this, that Heiser's influence has just been phenomenal. I mean, for a biblical scholar, I mean, in the world of, it's great. And I'm glad that you guys are carrying on a legacy.
Yeah, we're honored to be a part of it for sure. So thank you so much. And listeners, thank you for joining in. Remember, you can like, share, subscribe, leave us a review, and join us right back here next time as we get more of your questions answered on new books of the Bible. If you're enjoying the Ask a Scholar podcast, click follow on your podcast listening app to subscribe. Want to help further our mission? Consider becoming a monthly partner at AWKNG.com and help us make an impact in the lives of others all around the world as we work to make biblical understanding accessible to all with no exceptions. Join us next time as we get more of your Bible questions answered. And don't forget to visit AWKNG.com to engage in all our biblical resources that we offer.